Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Risk Matrix with James Junkin.
Everyone's in the Matrix. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. It's good to be here.
We are going to run into a topic today that has everything to do with the home and being with your loved ones and all these different things. But before we do that, again, I'm Dr. Martin. I introduced James. We're going to have a note from our sponsor read by James, and then James is going to take us into the topic.
Today's episode of the Risk Matrix, powered by Veriforce, is sponsored by Cleargistics. Is your company burdened by paper tickets and forms? Do you still use spreadsheets to collect information from the field? Well, there is a much better way with Cleargistics. Cleargistics is a cloud-based digital tracking solutions that allows companies with field operations to digitally capture a wide variety of information produced in the field, such as, service tickets, JSAs, JHAs, inspection documents, waste manifest, incident reports, shipping documents, payroll, and much, much more. Cleargistics is highly configurable and flexible, easy to use, especially by your folks in the field and safety professionals everywhere, and it adapts to each company's operations, staff, workflows, and needs. To learn more about Cleargistics and the solutions they have, check us out at cleargistics.com/Veriforce. And I look forward to hearing from some of our listeners about their experiences moving from paper. But today's episode, Dr. Martin, I thought was a great one. And that's us taking safety home. We talk so much about safety at work. And now we're all going home for the holidays, or most of us are going home for the holidays. And God bless those that stand to watch while the rest of us are at home, right? And so I'd like for us to talk today about taking safety home with you and not just at work.
Okay, let's roll with this, right? Before we got on the air today to talk about this topic, you and I were swapping stories about people in our neighborhoods. James, as you can tell, lives in the South. He's got a tan. He says it's the lights, but that's a lie. There's actually sun down there. And as you can see, I'm white as a ghost, and I'm up here in Maine and New Hampshire, up in the Northeast. So we're two opposite sides of the country, or at least up and down. But we both have horror stories about people who are living it at work, the risk and the safety, right? And they really have their minds on that, but then they go home and they get lax and things happen. So James, you had a great story that you started with when we were starting to talk about this topic about it getting cold in the South. Now, I don't have any sympathy for you that it's cold in the South, but you go ahead and tell us that story because it really kind of rings home.
It does get cold, not as cold as it does in the Northeast, but when you live in the South, you're unprepared for it. Many cases, many cases. So, it's starting to cool off. It's still in the 60s some during the days, low 70s, and cooler temperatures at night. We just had a family in this area bring a generator. They didn't have power for whatever reason, probably couldn't afford it. But they brought a generator into their home. Now, usually when you bring a generator into the home, you know that they're going to perish probably from carbon monoxide poisoning. But in this case, they didn't wire it correctly, hook it up correctly, and they burned the house down. And a small child, like 4 years old, died in the flame. And you're going to hear that story or some variation of that story in house fires or things of that nature all over this country as we start transitioning from the fall and into the winter. So fire safety is something we talk about a lot at work, but do we talk about it at home? And are we prepared for it at home?
Now we did in a previous episode, I think it's going to air before this one, we did the top 10 safety toolboxes, right? And one of the tips of doing toolbox or safety topics, when you present things, that you give examples of things in the home that people can watch out for, right? In the case of your generator incident, we have that happen in the Northeast too. A lot of us have wired generators to the home, and they have little sheds outside. no problem, right? But people will run out as soon as there's a snowstorm or a power outage. They'll buy the generator and they'll either put it in the house, which again, as you said, is not a good idea because it's not wired for it, or they'll put it in the garage, or they'll put it just outside the garage. And either way, you create a inhalation hazard, carbon monoxide buildup, and a bunch of other diesel fumes, etc. Right? And so people do die not only of the fire hazards because they are wired improperly, but they die of the asphyxiation hazards that are created, right? And I'm going to tag on this generator story, and I'm going to say a lot of people here in the Northeast, because all of our furnaces kick on, is they don't do maintenances on their furnaces, right? As we would on our tools at work. And we turn on those furnaces and they run, and perhaps they have a maintenance issue and the carbon monoxide buildup, and whole families are killed. And again, I don't want to be gloom and doom, but these are things that we could be using as examples of how to take safety home with you with our workers.
Here's another one. And this time of year is, we're filming this a little bit in advance, but come the Thanksgiving holidays around here, at least, people, and it moves earlier and earlier every year. I'm waiting for Christmas lights to come up after the 4th of July here pretty soon,
Yep.
Soon as Halloween's over, people are putting up Christmas lights. Well, what does that involve? A ladder, right? And so I always tell people, if you want to see the most unsafe thing in the world, watch a safety professional not at work, right? And I've done some of these stupid things too as well. Not too many years ago, I fell off a ladder. I fell down some stairs carrying boxes during a move. So look, it's about being situationally aware, bringing things home with you that you use at work all the time. Be careful on those ladders and use ladders. How many people are going to try to put their tree topper on, and we're up here on this tree and we're standing on a chair or something ridiculous, and next thing we fall and we have an injury or even worse, right? I want to piggyback something on your, it's kind of electrical safety related, but on your fire safety. Most people don't have enough extension cord for what they need.
And they're expensive.
And they're expensive. And so a lot of folks will try to daisy chain using surge protectors and multiple outlet type thing. Don't do that. Don't do that. It creates an extreme fire hazard. Be careful about running extension cords and things like extension cords and those other connectors under carpeting. Try to hide it so it looks good for that Christmas picture. Look, man, we got Photoshop. We'll Photoshop all that stuff right out, right? We don't want to burn your house down at a time of the year when we should be enjoying each other and not heading to the hospital.
So we're just gonna piggyback off each other here. I've seen those surge protectors melt. They have a useful life, believe it or not. And it's not very long. It's not 10 years or 15 years or 20 years or however long you put them in the attic in the box with your Christmas lights. They have a useful life, and they also have a high failure rate. Okay. So these are things that you should be replacing along with your electrical cords. If you think it is expensive to buy good lights and to buy good cords and to buy good surge protectors, it's more expensive when you lose everything and your house burns down. So there's that, right? I've seen them melt. I've seen them fry outlets. Electrical safety, again, you can carry this home and you can use this as examples in your toolbox talks or whatever, because this is a huge time of year. I thought you were going to mention in fire safety, this is something we do up here in New England. I don't know if you do it in the South, but they deep fry turkeys up here, and they deep fry everything, right? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
How many people a year have major incidents, third-degree burns when we're doing, trying to deep fry a turkey? What is the number one rule in deep frying a turkey? Do not take the frozen turkey and drop it into a boiling pot of grease. You will create an explosion. You will create an explosion. So, I hate to say it, if you don't know how to do it properly, go to YouTube. But you want to thaw this turkey out before you put it into the deep fryer. Because if not, it's going to become a projectile and people can get seriously injured. People do get seriously injured. Some of them even die. You don't want to have that at Christmas or Thanksgiving festivities or New Year festivities. You're there to enjoy your family and your friends, and right. So be prepared for it. Do it properly, and certainly that's something you need to do outside. Outside.
Yep.
Not
All
in.
right. So the other thing we do up here in New England is it gets cold out, and some of us already have our grills on our deck, right? But we bring them closer and closer and closer to that slider door, right? So one of the other things we see up here is a lot of fires from grills located up to the house because there's so much snow in the yard. Maybe that doesn't happen in the south because you don't get the snow that we do, but we pull them right up to the house. So you know that is a big thing up here. You see fires every day, and you know, listen, we don't have to preach to you about safety in your home, but these are things that you can think about the next time that you're trying to protect your family.
I'm gonna speak from some personal experience here. Don't always do the right thing, right? So this time of year, opening presents, kids' toys, getting all these plastic anti-theft things off. I stabbed myself in my abdomen with a dive knife about 5 years ago because you cut away, right? Well, James was bringing it to him and it came loose, wow. And luckily it only went in about 2 inches.
It's enough.
It's been great to be disemboweled at Christmas.
Yeah. Sharp objects, kids want to get into things. Even some of the packaging on these presents can cause cuts, right? I want to go back to the Christmas lights, right? Because electrical safety again is a huge thing. A lot of us love Christmas. We go to the dollar store or wherever we go to buy our lights because it's really expensive to get all those things. Remember, you need to replace those strings every once in a while because the cold and heat up here, probably just the heat down in the south, they're freezing and melting and doing all these things while they're in your attic or wherever you're storing them. And they also have a useful life. I will also say this, my favorite lights as a kid were bubble lights. Remember those lights?
Yes, from the
Okay.
70s.
You know, and they actually sold them up until the 2000s, and some people may still have them in their boxes because they were so cool, right? That the heat came from the lamp and it bubbled the liquid inside. Well, guess what that liquid is, James?
What?
Methanol.
You don't say.
Methanol.
My mother has those from the 70s. She loves them. They're still out there.
Right? And
You don't
so
want to get that too hot.
don't assume that what you think is safe, what you think is innocuous, is innocuous, right? Because what they did in the 70s versus what they did now. I mean, I will tell you, I bought Christmas lights before everything kind of locked down going on planes and stuff. I actually bought some of those lights in the 90s in Wisconsin and flew them back in the cabin of a plane with the methanol in it. It said methanol right on the side, right? I knew what it was. But did I get rid of them? Yeah, but don't assume anything. And you know what? Useful life is a big thing, whether in the workplace or at home, right? Stuff costs money, but the hazards that you can be exposing yourself to could be just much more expensive in the way of life and or loss of property.
Things we do down here in the South, I don't know, and probably out west as well. Fireworks. Fireworks. Every year, someone is seriously injured with fireworks. Some even die. But I've seen more serious injuries than I have death. Loss of hands, loss of fingers, severe burns, men, women, children messing around with fireworks. Now, I like fireworks. Fireworks are cool. I like to enjoy them, and sometimes we shoot them off here at the house. But practice firework safety. Do not ignite a firework in your hand. Do not ignite a firework in your hand. Over the 4th of July holidays, We had someone that ignited a firework in their hand, and it was one of those that shoots way up and explodes. You know, it's a cannonball or a mortar round, is what they call it.
Yep.
Mortar round.
He's holding
That
on to
went
it.
off in his hand. He lost all these hands, all those fingers.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a life-changing event. So you want to have fun, you want to enjoy things, you know, you want to live life, but you can do all this stuff and you can do it safely by incorporating some safe thought processes when we're going out there and planning these activities. Here's one that always tragically happens: automobile accidents. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Either we're running from work and rushing to get home, fall asleep, or we drank too much and we get behind the wheel. Those two things will claim dozens of lives over the holidays. And both of those things are preventable.
So let me add on a personal story. I did a toolbox talk for a construction firm in New York City. And it was specifically related to getting behind the wheel, rushing to and from. Construction workers, while hopefully well paid, are not always well paid. On the holidays, things need to get done. They're working longer hours. They're trying to, take more shifts, pay for things, etc. And they had a construction firm had like 3 fatalities, because their workers were working such long hours that they were getting behind the wheel and falling asleep on the way home, right? Or rushing to make it home so that they can see Christmas or all these other things. So, all of these things, James, are basically tying back to the things we're going to talk about in our top 10 safety meetings for 2024, right? We're talking fall protection. We've talked fire and explosion safety. We've talked electrical safety. We've talked chemical hazards, inhalation hazards, right? All of these things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're all there. And, when I talk about taking safety home with us, right? This is a cycle. And again, I will say that as a safety professional, I am not always the safest at home, right? What's the first thing you do when you don't have a ladder? You don't go out and buy a ladder, right? You use a stool, or you use a chair, or you do have a ladder and it's not the right kind of ladder, right?
Or you use a teenager.
Or you use a teenager and you think, well, they're disposable. No, take that back. But all of these things are good examples of how you can bring the message to something that people really care about, which is getting home safe to their families, number one, and keeping their families safe while they're there, right? And they bring that back to work, and it creates a cycle of safe work practices, safe home practices, and really kind of brings the message to kind of a full circle. So I want to mention at least one more, and I saw this a lot. That I was in EMS in the police force for a short amount of time, and we saw this a lot. Elderly people taking care of your folks that can't do for themselves. They will do a lot of these things that we're talking about, right? Because they don't want to feel like they can't, or they don't want to rely on somebody, right? We had a call where we had somebody who was an elderly person and they couldn't afford the gas for their house. So they had a propane heater inside, or a salamander heater inside, right? Didn't die, but was, severely asphyxiated, had to be taken to the hospital, right? The cold, right? Are you checking on people to make sure that they're actually okay and that they're not trying to make do? This really kind of, it hurts my heart to think that we lose a lot of our elderly, or a lot of our families that can't afford for themselves around the holidays, because we are not taking care to be our brothers and sisters' keeper.
Absolutely. I think it's a good place to stop. So on behalf of Dr. Martin and myself, the Veriforce team that powers this podcast, we'd like to wish everyone happy holidays, and we will see you in 2024.
there's lots of good stuff coming in the new year. We're going to talk about a lot of business topics related to risk, safety, procurement, all of these things. And we're going to make it interesting. So happy holidays. However you celebrate.
And do it safe. And y'all keep bringing those workers home safe as well.